Daniel Knox sat at the edge of the observation deck, gazing out into the vast emptiness of space. The stars twinkled like tiny diamonds scattered across a black velvet sky, but his mind was far from the peaceful view. His assignment as part of a human diplomatic exchange aboard the alien starship Scifi had been fascinating, but challenging. He was stationed among the Eliari, an advanced alien species that had a mysterious, almost elusive way of living. Their culture was ancient, their customs cryptic, and their beauty unlike anything he'd ever encountered. Daniel, a soft voice interrupted his thoughts. He turned around to see Vel'Ari, an Iliari woman, standing in the doorway. Her tall figure was draped in a flowing gown made from fabric that shimmered in the low light, her large eyes reflecting the distant stars as if they contained secrets of their own. Vel'Ari was one of the most prominent members of the Iliari Council, and she had been assigned to work with him on various diplomatic missions during his time aboard the ship. Vel'Ari, Daniel replied with a smile, standing up to greet her. Is everything all right? She tilted her head slightly, her gaze intense but kind. I have an invitation for you, Daniel. A personal one. She paused, letting the words sink in. I would like to invite you to my homeworld, Nifilus. Daniel blinked in surprise. Your homeworld? He asked, his voice tinged with both curiosity and uncertainty. Are you sure that's a good idea? I mean, I'm just a diplomat here, not an expert in Iliari culture. Vel'Ari's lips curved into a small smile. It's not a matter of expertise, Daniel. It's a matter of trust. We have much to learn from each other, and I believe the time has come for us to share more of our ways with you. Daniel hesitated. He had spent several months aboard the Zulfora, learning about the Iliari people, but they were a closed-off society in many ways. They had shared their technology, their history, and their knowledge, but only on their own terms. Vel'Ari was one of the few Iliari who seemed willing to break those boundaries, and Daniel respected her for that. Still, the idea of visiting her homeworld felt like a step into unknown territory. I appreciate the offer, Vel'Ari, Daniel said, his thoughts racing. But why now? What is it you want me to see? Vel'Ari's expression softened, and she stepped closer, her voice lowering. There are things on Nifilus, things that are tied to our history, that I believe you, as a human, need to understand. It's about the past, Daniel. Something ancient, and something, perhaps more important than we've realized. Daniel frowned. Her words were cryptic, and they stirred something deep inside him, something he couldn't yet put into words. I don't understand, he admitted. What do you mean by more important than we've realized? She met his gaze, her eyes intense. I cannot explain all of it here. But I promise, once you see it for yourself, you will understand. She paused, a slight, knowing smile on her face. You are needed, Daniel. Your kind, the humans, have a role to play in what is coming. Daniel's heart raced a little at the weight of her words. He had heard rumors of the Iliari's ancient legends, tales of a lost hero, a savior from another time. The Iliari were tight-lipped about their history, and the few stories that had been passed down were often vague and full of mystery. The human scientists who had studied them speculated that they might be referring to a being from Earth, perhaps even a distant ancestor, but no one had ever been able to prove anything. All right, Daniel said, shaking his head in disbelief. I'll come with you, but I still don't understand. What exactly are you trying to show me? Vel'Ari gave him a brief, almost reassuring smile. That will become clear in time. A few days later, Daniel found himself aboard Vel'Ari's personal starship, headed for Nifilus, the Iliari homeworld. As they traveled through Iliari-controlled space, Daniel couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. The ship was sleek and advanced, but there was something in the way Vel'Ari moved, her quiet confidence, her deep focus, that made him feel as though he was a part of something far bigger than he had originally imagined. Do you feel it? Vel'Ari asked as they passed through a shimmering asteroid belt, the stars overhead seeming to pulse in rhythm with the ship's movements. Daniel glanced at her, unsure what she meant. "Feel what?" "The weight of the past," she said softly. "The way time is intertwined with our present. It's all around us, watching, waiting." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine, but he didn't respond. Instead, he leaned back in his seat, watching as the stars stretched into long, shining lines, feeling the strange pull of the unknown. As the ship approached Nifilus, the landscape of the planet slowly came into view, a sprawling world of rolling green hills, sparkling oceans, and towering cities, their architecture unlike anything he had seen before. The skyline was a blend of organic shapes, as if nature itself had crafted the buildings. It was breathtaking. Valerie turned to him with a mysterious smile. "Welcome to my world, Daniel. You are about to see more than you ever imagined." Daniel swallowed, uncertain of what lay ahead, but knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. The journey to Nifilus was unlike any other Daniel had experienced. As he sat in the sleek, almost silent passenger seat aboard Valerie's personal vessel, his thoughts swirled with a mixture of anticipation and doubt. He had never been this far from Earth before, not even during his years as an engineer on various space missions. The alien technology around him was advanced beyond anything humanity had developed, and it only deepened his curiosity about the Iliari people. Valerie sat beside him, her eyes focused on the stars ahead. She had been quiet for much of the journey, her posture relaxed but alert. Every now and then, her fingers would brush over the controls in front of her, guiding the ship through the unknown reaches of Iliari space with a skill that seemed almost effortless. It was clear she was accustomed to the vastness of the universe, but Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her calm demeanor than she was letting on. "How long until we reach Nifilus?" Daniel asked, breaking the silence. His voice felt strange, as if the quiet of space had made his words more distant. Valerie glanced at him, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Not long now. We are almost there, but I think you should rest for a while. The journey can be intense for someone not used to Iliari space." Daniel didn't argue. He was exhausted from the endless series of meetings and diplomatic sessions aboard the Zelphora. Even though his assignment was supposed to be a peaceful one, he often felt like he was treading water, never fully understanding the true depths of the Iliari culture or their intentions. But now, with Valerie's invitation and the promise of something deeper awaiting him, he felt a sense of excitement, even as he couldn't quite place what that something was. He leaned back in his seat, closing his eyes for a moment. The hum of the ship was soothing, almost lulling him to sleep. The journey seemed endless, yet strangely peaceful. As he drifted in and out of consciousness, strange dreams began to form. Visions of tall, elegant structures and vast open skies, of a civilization that had flourished for millennia. There were faces too, blurred and elusive, with eyes that shimmered like the stars themselves. Among them, there was one face that stood out, a human face, strong and resolute, like the one he had seen in the ancient Iliari murals back on the Zelphora. The sound of a gentle chime woke him from his reverie. Valerie had nudged him softly. "We're entering the outer atmosphere of Nifilus. You might want to see this." Daniel blinked, trying to shake off the lingering dream. He stood up, his legs feeling slightly unsteady, and moved to the observation window. What he saw took his breath away. The planet Nifilus stretched before him, a world of stunning natural beauty. The surface was covered with vast green forests, sprawling plains, and crystal-clear oceans that sparkled in the light of the distant sun. It was a paradise, a place untouched by the struggles that often marked the history of Earth. Floating in the atmosphere above the planet were enormous, graceful ships, sleek and smooth like the one he was traveling in, but far larger. Some were gliding silently over the surface, while others hovered high above, like silent guardians watching over the world below. "Is this your home world?" Daniel asked, his voice filled with awe. He had read about Nifilus in the ship's logs, but seeing it in person was something entirely different. The planet's beauty was overwhelming, almost otherworldly. Valeri's eyes softened as she looked at the planet below. Yes, Nithilis is the heart of our people, a place where we have lived for thousands of years. It is a sanctuary, a place of peace. She paused, her tone growing serious. But it is also a place of great secrets. The world you see before you is not as simple as it seems, Daniel. Daniel turned to her, puzzled. What do you mean? It looks perfect, like nothing could ever go wrong here. Valeri shook her head slowly. It is not perfect, Daniel. Not by any means. There are parts of our world that are hidden, places no one has dared to visit for centuries. And there are things buried beneath the surface that even the Eliari are afraid to uncover. Daniel frowned. What kinds of things? And why are you telling me this now? Valeri met his gaze, her expression unreadable. Because you are part of something that is far older than you realize, something tied to the history of my people, and perhaps the future of yours. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Daniel wasn't sure what Valeri was getting at, but there was an intensity in her voice that suggested she wasn't just telling him stories. She believed what she was saying. We will land soon, Valeri continued, her voice softening. I just want you to understand that Nithilis is not just a place of beauty. It is a place of power. And that power may change everything you thought you knew about us. Daniel nodded, but his mind was racing. What did she mean by power? And what did it have to do with him? Before he could ask more, the ship began its descent, the atmosphere outside thickening as they entered the planet's upper layers. The soft hum of the ship shifted into a low rumble, and the stars outside were replaced by the vast, swirling clouds of Nithilis sky. As they lowered closer to the surface, Daniel could see the sprawling cityscapes of Valeri's homeland, a blend of nature and architecture, where towering trees seemed to grow alongside futuristic buildings made of gleaming stone. The ship touched down gently, and Valeri turned to him with a final knowing look. Welcome to Nithilis, Daniel, she said. Your journey is just beginning. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine as he stepped off the ship and onto the soil of a world that seemed both alien and strangely familiar. This was not just a visit. It was the start of something much greater. The soft hum of the ship's engines gradually faded as Daniel stepped onto the surface of Nithilis, his boots making a slight crunch against the ground. The air was fresher than he had expected, cool and crisp, carrying the scent of pine and something else he couldn't quite place, perhaps a blend of ancient earth and alien life. Valeri stood beside him, her expression calm, but there was an undeniable intensity in her gaze. Follow me, she said, her voice quiet but certain. There is much to show you, and it cannot be explained in words. Daniel nodded, his curiosity growing. His senses felt sharper here, as if the planet itself was alive with history, waiting to share its secrets. As they walked through the verdant landscape, Daniel couldn't help but notice the seamless harmony between nature and civilization. Towering trees with golden bark intertwined with delicate structures of metal and glass, forming a breathtaking tapestry of Eliari architecture. Your world is beautiful, Daniel remarked as they passed beneath the towering archways of what appeared to be a ceremonial entrance. Yes, Valeri answered softly, her gaze fixed ahead. But beauty is only a small part of what Nithilis represents. It is our cradle, our beginning. But it is also the place where our darkest history was forged. Daniel frowned, glancing at her. What do you mean? I thought your people were peaceful. I've read about your culture, your advancements in technology and philosophy. Everything seemed perfect. Valeri stopped walking and turned to face him, her large eyes filled with something he couldn't quite understand. That is the story we have chosen to tell the galaxy, Daniel. The story we want others to see. She hesitated, as if carefully choosing her next words. But beneath that story lies another. A story not even the most trusted of our people dare to speak of. Daniel's heart began to race. He had expected an adventure of sorts, a journey into the heart of an ancient civilization. But this was something deeper, something unsettling. "What happened?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Valeri's eyes flickered with something akin to regret. "Long ago, before we became the Elieri you see now, our people were divided. There was a time when we sought to dominate other worlds, to expand our influence across the stars. We thought we were invincible." She paused, her gaze dropping to the ground. "But we were wrong." Daniel listened intently, his thoughts a whirl of questions. He had heard no mention of this part of Elieri history in the diplomatic briefings. Was this an ancient secret, or was it something they were hiding? That was when the pale flame appeared. Valeri continued, her voice carrying the weight of the words. "A being, not of our people, but a human, a warrior who saved us from ourselves. He united our fractured worlds and showed us the true meaning of peace. It is said that his sacrifice created the foundation of everything we are today." Daniel blinked in surprise. "A human? A warrior? But that doesn't make sense. I thought your species had never encountered humans until recently. How could one of us?" Valeri raised her hand, silencing him. "This was long before your kind ventured into the stars. The stories say that the pale flame was an ancient human, a figure out of time, who appeared when our world was on the brink of destruction. He gave us a gift, a power we have kept hidden ever since." "A power," Daniel repeated, his voice thick with confusion. "What kind of power? And why hasn't anyone mentioned this before? Why are you telling me all of this now?" Valeri's face darkened. "Because I believe you are the one who is meant to awaken that power. You share something with that warrior, Daniel, something deep within your bloodline." She stepped closer to him, her voice lowering. "You are not just a visitor here. Your presence is a sign that our past is about to collide with our future." Daniel recoiled slightly, taken aback by the weight of her words. "I don't understand. I'm just a diplomat, a human with no special abilities." Valeri's eyes bore into his, her gaze unwavering. "You may not see it yet, but you are connected to that warrior in ways you cannot yet comprehend. Your ancestors, your lineage, it is tied to our history in ways that transcend time." They continued walking, the silence between them stretching longer than Daniel would have liked. The path grew steeper as they approached a towering structure carved into the side of a mountain, a monument that seemed to pulse with a strange, otherworldly energy. The building itself was ancient, its stone walls covered in intricate carvings depicting scenes of battles, peace treaties, and strange symbols that Daniel couldn't quite decipher. "This is where the pale flame was said to have fallen," Valeri said, her voice almost reverent as she led him inside. The air in the chamber was thick with the weight of centuries of history. It was cooler here, and the walls were lined with holographic displays that flickered softly in the dim light. "These are the records of our ancestors," Valeri explained, gesturing toward the glowing projections. "This is where we learned of the pale flame's sacrifice and the power he left behind." She turned to face him. "And now it is your turn to learn." Daniel's heart raced. Was this why he had been invited here? Was he truly connected to this ancient human warrior? And if so, what role did he have to play? The mystery deepened with each passing moment, and Daniel knew that the answers he sought were just out of reach. Valeri stepped closer to a holographic display, and with a touch of her hand, the projection shifted, showing an image of a human face, one that was eerily familiar. "This is the face of the pale flame," she said quietly. "And it is also your face, Daniel." Daniel stared at the holographic image in disbelief. The face of the warrior, the pale flame, was unmistakable. It was his own face, his own features, staring back at him from the ancient projection. He felt his knees grow weak as his mind raced, trying to make sense of what Valeri had just told him. This doesn't make any sense," he whispered, his voice shaky. "How can this be me? I don't understand. I'm just an engineer, a diplomat. I don't have any special abilities. I. Valerie raised a calming hand. You must understand, Daniel. The records say that the pale flame was not merely a warrior. He was a symbol of something greater, a force that saved our people from their darkest hour. And now, the energy that he left behind, the power he awakened, is dormant once more. But you are connected to it. Your bloodline carries the same legacy, the same potential. Daniel took a step back, his mind reeling. But why me? Why am I? He stopped mid-sentence, his words trailing off. He had so many questions, yet no answers. Valerie's gaze softened as she approached him. You are not the first to be chosen, Daniel. There have been others, but they did not awaken the power. It was too much for them. But you are different. I can feel it. She placed a hand gently on his arm. It is time to see for yourself. Before Daniel could protest, Valerie led him deeper into the monument, through narrow stone corridors that seemed to pulse with ancient energy. The walls were lined with inscriptions, some of which Daniel recognized as a form of Eliari writing. Other parts were unfamiliar, filled with symbols that seemed to shift and change as they passed. It was as if the very building was alive, responding to their presence. Finally, they arrived at a large chamber, its walls adorned with more glowing projections. In the center of the room stood an imposing stone structure, shaped like an altar. The air in the room felt thick with energy, and Daniel couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. This is where the pale flame was said to have activated the power, Valerie explained, her voice low. It is a trial, one that tests those who are chosen. A trial of strength, courage, and heart. Only those who are truly worthy can awaken the power within. Daniel's heart began to race. You mean I have to go through some kind of trial? But I'm not. I'm not prepared for something like that. I don't even know what I'm supposed to do. Valerie turned to him, her expression serious. The trial is not something you can prepare for. It is a test of your true nature, Daniel. It will show you what you are capable of, and what you are willing to sacrifice. Only then will you understand your role in all of this. She motioned toward the stone altar. Step forward. The trial begins now. Despite his doubts, Daniel couldn't bring himself to turn away. Something deep within him urged him to move forward, to face whatever was coming. He took a deep breath and walked toward the altar, his footsteps echoing in the silence of the chamber. As he stood in front of the structure, a wave of energy seemed to wash over him. The air hummed, and the stone beneath his feet began to glow with a soft, blue light. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest as he looked up to see the symbols on the walls flickering to life, their meaning becoming clearer with each passing moment. They weren't just symbols. They were instructions, guiding him toward something he couldn't yet understand. Then, without warning, the room around him began to shift. The walls seemed to blur, and the air grew thick with a strange pressure. Daniel's vision flickered, and he suddenly found himself standing in a vast, barren landscape. The sky above him was dark, filled with swirling clouds that seemed to pulse with energy. "What is this?" Daniel asked, his voice trembling as he looked around. "This is the trial," Valerie's voice echoed through the empty space. "You must face it alone. The test will show you your fears, your desires, your strengths, and your weaknesses. Only by understanding yourself can you unlock the power that lies within." The ground beneath Daniel's feet trembled, and he stumbled slightly, trying to maintain his balance. Then, from the shadows, a figure emerged. It was a warrior, dressed in armor, wielding a sword that gleamed with an eerie, unnatural light. The warrior's face was obscured by a helmet, but Daniel could feel the weight of its gaze, as though it was studying him, waiting for him to make the first move. Without thinking, Daniel stepped forward. His hands instinctively reached for the tools he always carried, his engineering devices, his equipment, but they weren't there. He was unarmed, vulnerable. The warrior raised its sword, and with a terrifying cry, it charged toward him. Daniel's heart raced. He could feel the pressure mounting, the fear creeping in, but something deep inside him pushed back against it. He wasn't helpless. He wasn't just a diplomat. He was human. And humans had a way of overcoming the impossible, of rising against the odds. He held his ground, and when the warrior came within striking distance, he moved with speed and precision he didn't know he had. The warrior's sword struck the ground where he had been just a moment ago, and Daniel, with a strength he hadn't realized, grabbed the warrior's arm and forced it to the ground. The warrior's form flickered and then dissolved into mist, leaving Daniel standing alone in the vast emptiness. The trial was over. The moment Daniel stepped back from the altar, the landscape around him began to dissolve, and he was once again standing in the stone chamber, Valeri at his side. His heart was still racing from the intensity of the trial, but there was a strange calmness settling over him. He had faced the warrior, overcome the fear, and emerged victorious. At least, he thought so. He looked down at his hands, still feeling the adrenaline from the battle, but they were steady now. The power Valeri had spoken of felt closer, as though it were within his reach. He could almost sense it, a hum of energy beneath his skin, but he didn't have time to reflect on it just yet. The trial was only the beginning. "Well done, Daniel," Valeri said, her voice softer than before. She seemed impressed, though there was something else in her eyes, something she wasn't yet ready to share. "You've passed the trial, but your journey is far from over." Before Daniel could respond, the room seemed to shift again. A low, resonating hum filled the air, and the holographic projections on the walls flickered, changing into a series of complex symbols. The stone chamber that had been so still just moments ago was now vibrating with energy. A sudden force gripped Daniel, and he felt an overwhelming presence surround him. Valeri stepped back, her expression growing tense. "It's the council," she said, her tone serious. "They are here to oversee your actions. They are not pleased with what you've done." Daniel's brow furrowed. "What do you mean? I passed the trial. Doesn't that mean I've proven myself?" Valeri nodded, but her eyes betrayed a sense of unease. "It means you've unlocked something, Daniel. Something the Eliari have long kept hidden, and not everyone is ready for what that might mean." The sound of heavy footsteps echoed in the chamber, and the air grew colder as the Eliari Council entered, their presence commanding and powerful. They were tall, their skin pale and smooth, their robes flowing like silk as they moved. Their eyes, however, were cold, almost emotionless, as though they had seen countless generations pass before them and had lost any sense of wonder. The leader of the council, a woman named Stanira, stepped forward. Her eyes studied Daniel with sharp intensity, and her voice was laced with authority. "You have done something no human has ever done, Daniel Knox," she said, her words carrying a weight of centuries of tradition. "You have awoken the power that lies dormant within our world, the power we have kept hidden for millennia." Daniel stood tall, trying to meet her gaze. "I didn't ask for this," he said, his voice steady but confused. "I was just following Valeri's invitation. I don't understand what you're all afraid of." Sanira's lips curled into a slight, almost imperceptible frown. "It is not a matter of fear," she said, her tone stern. "It is a matter of control. You are not Eliari, Daniel. You are human, and humans do not understand the weight of the forces you have just unleashed. We have carefully kept this power hidden, for it is too great to be used lightly." Daniel felt a surge of frustration. "But I didn't do this on purpose. I just followed what I thought was a trial. You invited me here. Valeri invited me." He stopped himself, realizing he was raising his voice. The last thing he wanted was to be seen as a threat. Valeri stepped forward, her presence calming the tension in the room. "It is true, Xanira. Daniel did not seek this power. He was merely chosen, as the ancient texts foretold. The records spoke of a time when a human would come to us, one who would awaken the dormant force that binds our world. We must accept what is happening. The council members exchanged looks, and for a long moment, the room fell silent. Daniel could feel their eyes on him, judging him, weighing his every action. It felt like an eternity. Finally, Vanera spoke again. "The records are not wrong, Valeri. We have known for centuries that this moment would come, but we have also feared it. The power Daniel has awakened is not something that can be controlled easily. It is a power that has the potential to destroy as much as it can heal. Our people have lived in peace for thousands of years, but we cannot risk that peace being shattered by the forces Daniel has unlocked." Daniel's heart sank. "So, what are you going to do? Lock me up? Send me back to Earth?" Sanira's eyes softened slightly, but there was no warmth in them. "You will not be sent back, Daniel, but we will not allow you to roam freely until we understand what you have awakened. You will remain under our watch, at least until we can ascertain what role you are meant to play in this." Daniel was stunned. He had come here expecting to help, to learn more about the Eliari, to witness their culture. Instead, he found himself caught in a struggle for control over a power he didn't even know existed. How could he prove himself to them? How could he show them he meant no harm? Valeri moved to his side once again, her voice gentle. "I will stand by you, Daniel. You are not alone in this." Zanira's gaze shifted to Valeri, a silent challenge passing between them. Then, without another word, she turned and walked toward the council's exit. The rest of the council followed, leaving Daniel and Valeri standing alone in the chamber. Daniel exhaled a long breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "What now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Valeri placed a hand on his shoulder. "Now, we wait, and we hope that the council will see the truth, that you were chosen for a reason, and that reason is not to destroy, but to save." Daniel nodded, though doubt still lingered in his chest. He didn't know what the future held, but he did know one thing. He couldn't turn back now. The days following the council's decision were some of the longest Daniel had ever experienced. He had been confined to a private chamber in Valeri's palace, his every move watched, yet no one spoke of the power he had awakened or the trial he had completed. The Eliari kept their distance, and even Valeri, despite her promise to stand by him, was rarely seen. It felt as though the entire planet was holding its breath, waiting for something, waiting for him to prove his worth, or to show the council that he was either a savior or a threat. But Daniel wasn't waiting in silence. His mind raced with questions, none of which had answers. He could feel the strange energy still humming inside him, an untapped force that he couldn't control. Every time he tried to focus, the power seemed to pulse, responding to his emotions, to his confusion, and even his fear. He had to find a way to understand it, to harness it before it consumed him. Valeri visited him at dusk one evening, her presence as serene as ever. She entered the room, her eyes locking onto his, and she offered him a faint smile. "They've decided," she said simply, her voice calm. Daniel frowned. "What do you mean, they've decided?" "Decided what?" "The council has agreed to allow you to undergo a final trial," Valeri explained, her voice heavy with meaning. "This is the last test. If you pass, you will prove yourself worthy of the power you've awakened. If not—" She paused, her gaze turning toward the window. "You may never leave Nithilis." Daniel's heart skipped a beat at the weight of her words. A final trial. He ran his fingers through his hair, his mind reeling. "I don't know if I'm ready for something like that." "You are," she said gently, stepping closer to him. "The trial is not just about your abilities, Daniel. It is about understanding the responsibility that comes with them. You must accept who you are now, not who you were before. You have been chosen to fulfill a destiny you cannot run from." Daniel swallowed hard, but he nodded. What choice did he have? He had already proven that he could face his fears, that he could overcome what had been thrown at him so far. But this was different. This was not just about survival. It was about something far larger than he had ever imagined. "Where do I go for this trial?" Daniel asked, standing up from the chair. He was ready, even if he wasn't sure what he was ready for. Vel-Eri led him silently through the palace corridors, her steps light and sure. They moved down a narrow passage, deeper into the heart of the mountain where Nithilis had been built. As they walked, Daniel couldn't help but notice the change in the air. The energy seemed denser, heavier, and there was a constant low hum beneath their feet that seemed to vibrate in his chest. It was as if they were moving deeper into the planet's core, both literally and metaphorically. They arrived at a large, circular chamber that was dimly lit, with strange markings etched into the walls. At the center of the room was a large, intricate stone circle, covered in shimmering runes. Vel-Eri stopped in front of it and turned to Daniel. "This is the Cradle of Light," she explained, her voice echoing slightly in the space. "It is where our ancestors first tapped into the power of the land. The energy here is ancient, but it can be overwhelming. You must stay focused." Daniel stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. The symbols on the ground glowed faintly, their light pulsing as though in response to his presence. He could feel the power, the same energy that had coursed through him during the trial, the same power that had made him feel both invincible and terrified at the same time. "Do not fear," Vel-Eri said softly, almost as if reading his thoughts. "The cradle will not harm you unless you allow it. You must allow yourself to connect with it, to understand it. Trust in yourself, Daniel. Trust in the part of you that has always been human." Daniel nodded, his breath steadying. He could do this. He had faced the unknown before. This time, however, he had to face it not with his hands or his intellect, but with his heart. He stepped into the center of the circle. The moment his feet touched the stone, the ground trembled beneath him. A surge of energy shot through his body, filling every inch of him with heat. He gasped as the power flowed into him, stronger than ever before. It was overwhelming, yet strangely comforting. His mind began to race again, but this time, he didn't fight it. He didn't try to control it. Instead, he allowed the energy to wash over him, to become part of him. Images flashed before his eyes, visions of the past and the future, of the Eliari and of Earth. He saw the warrior known as the Pale Flame, fighting alongside the Eliari in ancient times, his actions saving their world from ruin. He saw the destruction of their past, the pain and suffering caused by the pursuit of power, and the eventual peace that had followed. The images were fleeting, but they were clear. Suddenly, Daniel's vision shifted, and he found himself standing in the same barren landscape he had encountered during the trial. The warrior appeared again, this time standing beside him. The warrior's face was no longer hidden by a helmet, and Daniel saw that it was his own face, but from another time, another place. "You are ready," the warrior's voice boomed, as if it were coming from every direction. "You will wield the power, but it is you who must choose how to use it. Will you follow the path of destruction or the path of peace?" Daniel's heart raced. The question echoed in his mind as the energy around him intensified. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He had to make a choice. The power surged again, but this time, it felt like it was being tempered, shaped by his will. He felt it connect with him, not as an external force, but as part of him. It was a part of who he was, and it was up to him to decide how to use it. "I choose peace," Daniel said, his voice steady. "I choose to protect." The energy around him responded, glowing brighter and brighter until it enveloped him completely. And then, as suddenly as it had come, the energy faded, leaving him standing in the cradle of light, still and calm. Vel-Eri approached him slowly, her expression a mix of relief and awe. "You did it," she whispered. Daniel nodded, his chest rising and falling with deep breaths. He didn't fully understand what had happened, but he knew one thing for sure. He had found his path. And whatever came next, he was ready. The following days passed in a blur of meetings and decisions. After the trial beneath the Cradle of Light, Daniel had returned to Vel-Eri's palace to find the world of Nithilis irrevocably changed. The council, after much deliberation, had decided that he would not be sent back to Earth. Instead, he would remain on Nithilis, but not in the way he had imagined. His role had shifted from mere visitor to an integral part of Eliari history, one whose connection to the ancient power was undeniable. But even as the council recognized his potential, Daniel still had doubts. He had awakened something within himself, something that connected him to the past, to the warrior known as the Pale Flame. But what was he truly meant to do with this power? How would he navigate the delicate balance between peace and the destructive force that lay within him? One morning, as the sun rose over Nithilis, casting a soft glow over the hills and valleys, Daniel walked to the palace gardens, his thoughts heavy. The planet's beauty still took his breath away. It was a place of peace, but the weight of the decision that rested on his shoulders felt unbearable at times. He could sense that there was more to his journey than he had been told, more that Vel-Eri and the council weren't ready to share. "Good morning, Daniel." Vel-Eri's voice broke through his thoughts. She approached, her usual calm demeanor a quiet contrast to the storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. "Good morning," he replied, turning to face her. He couldn't help but notice the look in her eyes, a mixture of pride and concern. "What now? The council trusts me, but I don't feel like I've earned it yet." Vel-Eri smiled faintly, stepping closer to him. "You have earned it, Daniel. It is not the council's trust that matters, but your own belief in yourself. You have chosen peace over destruction, but the path forward will not be without its challenges." "I know," Daniel said, his voice tinged with frustration. "But what does this power mean? I can feel it, but I can't control it. It's like it's waiting for me to do something, and I don't even know what that is." She paused, looking out over the landscape, as if weighing her next words carefully. "This power," she began, "was never meant to be controlled. It is a force of nature, a part of the land itself. But it is not only the land that holds power. It is the choices we make that shape what that power becomes. The warrior of the past, the Pale Flame, was not a savior because of his strength. He was a savior because of his wisdom, his ability to choose peace even when he had the power to destroy." Daniel listened closely, trying to understand. "So, what do I do now? Do I stay here, help with diplomacy? What is my purpose here?" Vel-Eri's gaze softened, her voice gentle. "Your purpose, Daniel, is to bridge the gap between your people and mine. You are a symbol of unity, a living reminder of what can be achieved when two species come together. But more than that, you must continue to walk the path of peace. The power within you is not to be used for control, but for healing." Daniel nodded slowly, still unsure of how to put these ideas into action. He had been trained as an engineer, not a leader. He had never imagined himself as someone who could guide others or shape the future. But here, in the presence of the Eliari, he knew that the moment had come to rise above his doubts and find his place in this new world. As if reading his thoughts, Vel-Eri continued, "The council believes you are ready to address the greater challenges that lie ahead. Nithilis is not the only world in danger. There are threats beyond our borders, forces that seek to disrupt the peace we have fought so long to protect. Your presence here, your connection to both our past and future, is a beacon of hope for all who wish to see the galaxy remain in balance." Daniel took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words settle in. There was more at stake than he had realized. The power within him could be a tool for healing, yes, but it could also be a weapon. The question now was how to use it. "I won't let you down," Daniel said, his voice firm. "I will do whatever I can to help." Vel-Eri smiled, a look of pride crossing her face. "I know you will, Daniel. But remember, it is not just your strength or wisdom that will guide you. It is your heart. Never forget that." In the days that followed, Daniel found himself becoming more involved in the politics of Eliari diplomacy. The council, though still cautious about the extent of his abilities, slowly began to include him in meetings with neighboring alien species. His presence, though controversial, brought a new sense of hope to the galaxy. The Eliari people, once divided over the decision to allow a human to wield such power, began to unite around him, seeing in him not just a warrior, but a symbol of the peace they had long fought for. One evening, as the stars filled the sky above Nithilis, Daniel stood on the balcony of the palace, looking out over the vast landscape below. It was hard to believe how much had changed in such a short time. He had come to this planet as a stranger, uncertain of his place in the galaxy. But now he felt a deep connection to the land, to Velari, and to the Iliari people. "Are you ready, Daniel?" Velari's voice broke through his thoughts once again. She stood beside him, her eyes reflecting the starlight. Daniel turned to her, a sense of peace settling over him. "I'm ready," he said, a quiet determination in his voice. "I know what I'm meant to do now. The power isn't something I can control, but I can guide it, use it to help others, to protect what we've built here. And I'll do that, no matter what it takes." Velari smiled, her eyes warm with admiration. "Then we will face the future together." As they stood there, side by side, watching the stars, Daniel felt the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. But for the first time, he felt ready to carry it. He had found his purpose, and he knew that together with Velari and the Iliari, he could forge a future where peace was not just a dream, but a reality.